I promised you that I would talk to you about common sense and why it's your greatest adversary. So there really are three kind of big ways that common sense leads us astray. And the first is that we think if we are going to change people's behavior, they just need education. If we just give them some information, then they'll change their behavior. What's missing in this equation is that people don't know. And if we just fill in the gaps, then we can get them to do what we want. So let's think about one thing that people are talking about a lot right now, which is energy conservation. April opened today by telling you that buildings are responsible for 40% of our energy consumption, 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So if we want to make an impact on climate change, we need to think about buildings. So some social scientists were thinking, how do we get homeowners to reduce their energy consumption? And they sent auditors out to look at people's homes. And one of the things they were looking for and reporting back on and giving people information about is these little gaps around your doors and windows. If you live in an old house, like the house I grew up in, you might have these little cracks. And they're letting in cold air, and that's making you have to turn your furnace up. So if we just tell people how many cracks there are, how many windows need help, people will weather strip, right? So if you give people information, 20% of people will weather strip. But really, we're going to spend money and send people to homes and investigate, and we're only getting 1 out of 5 people to change their behavior. We can do better than that. We have to know that how you present information makes a difference. And one of the big things that makes a difference is making information tangible. If you take all of those little cracks around all of those doors and windows, and you say, how big is that? The gap in your house is as big as a basketball. People then magically now understand how important it is to fill them. When they just think they have 16 windows and cracks, they don't see it as important. But when you make it more tangible and say, you have a hole in your house the size of a basketball, people say, oh, maybe weather stripping those doors would really make a difference. So making information tangible makes a difference. The folks in this study did more than just make information tangible. They also personalized information to those homeowners, and they interacted with them. Putting up posters that people might or might not see is never as effective as talking to other people. Social interaction is one of the most important tools that we can use for making change. So there are other things, though, that help us when education fails us, when just giving out information is enough. Oh, sorry, I skipped that back up there. So when you give people all 3 of these things, 60% of them weather stripped. That's a 3-fold increase in how big the change is. So how you present the information triples the effectiveness of your effort, and knowing that makes a difference. Kind of generally, that if you want to change behavior, you've got to change people's attitudes. I talk about energy conservation often in my research, and people say to me, how am I going to get people to believe in climate change? I can't get people to conserve energy if they don't believe that we're killing the planet. And I say to them, you don't. You really don't have to change anybody's attitude about climate change. And people just don't believe me. And to them I say, you don't have to change attitudes to change behavior. And people always say, then what do you do? If you don't change attitudes, what do you do? Well, let's start with what the environmental sociologists have found over and over again in dozens of studies. Attitudes follow behavior. If you survey people about whether their attitudes are pro-environmental or not, it will not predict whether or not they engage in conservation behaviors. It will not predict whether or not they conserve water. It will not predict whether or not they recycle. Attitudes follow behavior. They do not predict it. So stop trying to change it. When people engage in the behaviors you want, you'll be able to measure the attitudes you expect. But before that, you need to do something else. So how many of you were asked by your parents to turn off the light when you leave the room? Raise your hands. Turn off the light when you leave the rooms. Okay, this is an effective strategy. Almost everyone in the audience had their arm up. That's because your parents do know that setting expectations works. They just don't know that it works for all kinds of things, much bigger things than turning off the light in your room when you leave it. So don't change attitudes, Set behavioral expectations. This is a poster of high school students at Rocky Mountain High School, little placards they put over the lights in all of the rooms in their high school, reminding teachers and students to turn off the lights, and that's what people do. When I interviewed people at this school, new teachers to that school said, I know that this school cares about energy conservation because I see this everywhere. It not only reminds me to engage in conservation behavior, but it also tells me that people in this place care about this issue. And that encourages me to think about it in my daily life. One more way that common sense tends to leave us astray: people think that they know what motivates them. Now, you all are human beings, and you think that because you're a human being, you're qualified to say what motivates you. You are wrong. I know, it makes you laugh. You actually don't know. It's kind of an insult to think I'm a human being and I can't be counted on to identify what motivates me. But social scientists know this to be true. So one of the biggest things that does influence our behavior is social norms. Street musicians know this and take advantage of it. It's why they put coins and money into their guitar cases or whatever their musical case is on the ground, because we know that when other people are doing something, other people are more likely to follow. What the street musicians don't know is that seating their case isn't really enough, because you haven't actually seen another person doing it. What they really should be doing is bringing their friend with them and asking their friend to come by every 5 minutes and drop $1 in. Anytime there's no action, can you just walk by and drop something in? The number one predictor of giving money to a street musician is walking past the musician directly behind someone who did contribute. Go back to this one. How many of you thought A will be the most effective? Be honest, raise your hands. How many of you thought A? All right, now you know that you're wrong. How many of you thought B? All right, we have some social scientists in the crowd, some people who've taken one of my classes or someone else's, and you know that B is the most effective because it utilizes social norms, and it also uses modeling. It shows someone doing the behavior that you are interested in. What's wrong with A is that it sets the inadvertent norm, the behavior that you're not interested in having people do. You're like, everybody litters, and since social norms are the most influential, you can create campaigns that are not only, does this say the wrong thing? Why are we laughing? Not only can you be ineffective in your campaign, many people, including the federal government, have created social norms campaigns that increase the behavior that they're trying to reduce because they use social norms in a way that is ineffective, because they don't know about their importance.